welcome to the Washtenaw County Democratic Party monthly meeting. It takes place first Saturday of every month, starting at 9:30. Chris Savage is the chair of the WCDP, and I'll turn the floor over to him. Chris.
I think we're going to let Congresswoman Dingell go first because she has about 12 other events happening in the next hour probably. So Debbie, why don't you take it away?
No, well, good morning, everybody. And it's not 12, but it's summer. And it's great for all of us as we bring everybody together. And this morning starts with the Azalea Festival Parade in Grosse Ile. So we are a big district, by the way. The 12th and the 6th will have, I've been actually talking a lot about this district and how proud I am to represent it and how it actually does reflect the diversity of this country, and that it is, we all listen to each other, and I'm really proud of this district. Let me just say that obviously there's a lot happening and we are all worried about many issues, and that's a major problem right now. Today is the 100th day of the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian people's spirit, their strength, their courage continues to inspire all of us, but this continues to be very real. It continues to be a threat to all democracy. It is impacting the world and us in so many ways, in everything from the cost of energy to how do we make sure that they're getting the support? How do we make sure we don't go to war, have some kind of World War III, to the issue that I've been working on for this past week is food. They are the largest grower of wheat in the world. And how are we going to ensure that the food supply has the wheat that they need to get? How is it going to be transported out of that region, having the capability to plant it? So that's a major issue that we're worried about. Guns are obviously front and center for all of us. Not one more shooting since we've last met. There have been horrific shootings from Buffalo to Texas to the daily shootings that are happening. I mean, we are beginning to normalize an Oklahoma shooting. It's not okay. The House will once again take up legislation next week that will have a number of parts to it. You guys have all read it. I can answer questions if you do, but it will, we will do the red flags bill, which is something that I've believed in for a long time. It would also raise the legal age of purchase for certain semi-automatic rifles, crack down on gun trafficking, establish safety requirements for residential storage of dangerous firearms, which after Oxford, we even all understand better. It would be on bump stocks and high capacity magazines, as well as ghost guns. It would, Nancy, it will not happen next week because quite frankly, we don't have the votes to ban the sale of assault weapons. There are Democrats that will not vote for it now, but Nancy has promised it will be brought to the floor. You all know how strongly I feel about guns. I believe that if we treat this the way we do every time, everybody goes to their corners and nothing happens. I'm going to work very hard to try to, and I've had some very intense conversations with Republicans and Democrats about how do we find some common ground. What really matters, these bills will pass the House. What will the Senate be willing to do? We've already passed background checks. We've already passed HR 8. There are discussions going on in the Senate to see what, if anything, can be done. President Biden gave a speech on Thursday night saying that, we have to act. I make this commitment to you. I know that you all care about it deeply, that we will get something done on that. There's going to be a lot of other stuff that's going to happen these next couple of weeks in the Congress, everything from reauthorizing WRDA, which deals with our nation's harbors and our waterways, deals with flooding issues, climate resilience. We're going to do an FDA bill, the infant formula. And I'm going to tell you, it is an outrage what's happened. No one is without blame. FDA should have investigated these whistleblower reports far earlier than they did. and I don't care that Abbott's a Michigan company, you need to understand that they were falsifying data. They were the bottles that they were producing had the formula within the seal and was introducing bacteria into those bottles. And the tests that the FDA was doing were being done on sealed bottles that were empty. And I don't care if it's a Michigan company. I do not let Abbott off the hook. I talk about it every hearing we are having. We're looking at legislation to address that. That continues to be another outrage. And gasoline prices are high. They're real. We can't deny that. It's because of a variety of issues. We have passed in the House price gouging legislation that continues to be the most effective way. A lot of people want to give a holiday on the gas tax. I'm going to just tell everybody that a gas tax holiday does not give consumers what people think it will give. Most of the money ends up not going back to the consumer's pocket. It hurts the highway transportation fund. It hurts the funding we need for the road. It doesn't mean we may not do one, but it will give people false hope. And it's not the solve or the solution that everybody wants. And it's something I'm really worried about. I've spent a great deal of time with the White House on how we, prices aren't going to come down for a month or two. That's real. We got a supply chain issue. We're doing it. They have come down a little. I shouldn't say that they're not going to come down, but it's going to take getting the supply chain fixed and a number of other issues until there's real relief. And I don't believe in making promises that aren't going to be real. So I could keep going because there is no shortage of issues that people are really worried about. I think we got to be open and honest and really talk to people. What I want to talk to you all about, not today, but as we get ready to go into the summer and the fall, is how we must contrast ourselves with Republicans. They are very good at being focused on message, staying on message, and disciplined. You don't have 100 different things. Just for instance, on Thursday, we got the Social Security and Medicare report, and we are doing far better than anybody thought that we would do. And we are funded for a longer period of time. And we need to talk about what Rick Scott wants to do, which is to do away with Medicare and Social Security. We need to help people understand what the Republican plans are and what it would do to their life. I want to give you all we are developing materials now. We're helping our colleagues in the Congress, and I want to give that to you. And I could go through the list, but there are a ton of people that need to talk today. I just want you to know I'm going to keep talking to you about all the issues that matter. I haven't even talked to you about climate change or, electric vehicles, or there is no dearth of material to talk about. And we need to really arm everybody and make sure we are giving people the facts and drawing that contrast between Republicans and Democrats as we go into the fall. And the last thing I'm going to say, which I sort of talked to Chris and Pat about, we got to come together in August. Washtenaw has always been the place that turns out the votes that are needed to deliver votes statewide. We have the ability to pick up state Senate seat, state House seat. We can only do that if we do it together. We can run hard, run against each other, but we all have to pull together in August to make sure that we deliver and don't let a disaster happen in the state of Michigan in November. Washtenaw is the key to that. I'm proud to be part of you. I'm proud to almost live there. July 5th is moving date. And we got to really work together. So I'll leave it at that, Chris.
Thank you, Congresswoman Dingell. We appreciate you as always, and thanks for all your hard work. You are the hardest working member of Congress that I'm aware of. Okay, so I have a few things to start. I'm going to share my screen briefly. We have a couple of events coming up. Eli, I need you to let me share the screen. You'll have to go to security and allow panelists to share screen.
I'm making you a co-host.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, oops, that's the poll. I don't want that. Okay, so the first event that's coming up, we are co-sponsoring this event with the Liberal Leadership League. This is a webinar, an online webinar. It's free. It's on June 22nd. Shink Osorio is a world-renowned at this point communication specialist. She does copious amounts of research on how best to effectively persuade our own voters to get out and do things, but also people in the middle who we don't often reach. And she's going to be doing a webinar with us to teach us how to be more effective at our communications, both in the primary and in the general election. So we really encourage you to join us for that. I'm going to put the link in the chat. It requires pre-registration. I will also put the the notification on our website. Those are both in the chat. But if you go to our website, you'll find this page, and it's got links for the registration and also a Facebook event that you could share with your friends. But highly encourage everybody to join us for that. The second thing that I'm going to share is our big fundraiser. As most of you know, we're not doing the annual dinner this year, which is normally our biggest fundraiser of the year. So we are doing other events that we can do outside. This is the 4th annual event. It happens in my backyard. My wife and I prepare all the food. It's a beautiful setting. It's a gorgeous garden, and there's lots of great fellowship. Get the links for that. You can go to this page, and it has all of the links. Where's find my? I lost the chat. I'm going to stop sharing. There is a link to. Oops, I just shared those all. I just shared all this stuff with Eli and not with everybody else. All right, let's try this again. So first of all, there is the link to the garden party, and there is the link to pre-register for the outta event, and this is the web page for the outta event. So really hope that everybody will join us for these things, particularly the fundraiser, because we're hoping to raise probably $15,000 with this year, because we really need to fill our coffers up. That's what allows us to do the voter guide and all the other amazing things that this organization does. Now, I want to address a touchy issue. I don't really want to have to address this, but I've been getting a lot of questions about it. There are contested Democratic primaries in both House District 47 and in Senate District 14. We, as our bylaws say, do not endorse in contested primaries. Almost all the Democratic organizations that I'm aware of have the same rule. It's not an MVP rule, but most local units have this rule, that they don't endorse in contested primaries. They don't put their finger on the scale for any particular candidate. We allow the voters to decide who the candidate is, and then we get behind that candidate, and we will continue to do that. Members of the leadership team are permitted to endorse as long as they don't do it in a way that suggests that the party is endorsing them. And so for those of us who have endorsed, we explicitly say you cannot say I am the chair of the party, or I'm not, I'm the vice chair of the party. They have to say something else, I'm the organizer or whatever, so that there's no suggestion that the party is weighing in early on the primaries. Unfortunately, in these two particular cases, the Jackson County Dems have not followed their own bylaws, as they are posted on their website and on the Michigan Democratic Party website, and are endorsing two candidates that are running. And it's kind of unfortunate. And what makes it most unfortunate is that the chair of that party, actually the four officers of that party, three of them are the chair, Connor Wood, his wife, Kelsey Heckwood, who is running in Senate District 14, and James Johnson Jr., who was on the panel last month, who is running in House District 47. They are violating their own bylaws, as they are posted on both their own website and on the Michigan Democratic Party website. Apparently they have changed those bylaws but not posted them, but this allows them to endorse. And it's got people asking, is this a Washtenaw versus Jackson thing? I want to assure you that this is not. We are just following our bylaws. But when people come to me and say, why can't we endorse candidates like this? It's because we're following our own rules. And I am committed to running a legit organization here. So is the entire leadership team of the Washtenaw Dems, and we will continue to do that. So if anybody's got any specific questions about this, I'm happy to take them offline. But I just wanted to address this for people who are wondering why the Jackson Dems are endorsing candidates and we are not. That is the reason. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ellie Savit. And Ellie, you have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. So wanted to give an update on what we're doing in the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office. And I want to start by acknowledging that this is Gun Violence Awareness Weekend. Wear orange weekend. So you see my shirt here. And look, it comes at a time where I don't think we need an awareness weekend. We need an action weekend and week and months. And we have seen gun violence skyrocket across the country. There are a number of reasons for that, but we're not immune from it in Washtenaw County. What we see when we see tragic gun incidents, by and large, is a confrontation plus the presence of a gun. It can be a kid that has a gun. It can be, a domestic violence incident where a gun is present, and we know that the presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of fatality by 500%. We also see these accidental shootings. There have been 20 children that have found unsecured guns in the state of Michigan in the last 18 months and shot and killed themselves or their siblings. We had a baby here in Ann Arbor that was shot, thankfully survived, 16-month-old baby, but shot by his 4-year-old brother who found an unsecured gun. This is why we need those safe storage laws, those red flag laws. These are not people going in and taking guns away. It's not violating anybody's Second Amendment rights. It's taking guns out of situations in which we know they are most dangerous. But of course, I'm the prosecutor, and I also want to let folks know what we're doing in the prosecutor's office about this. In 2021, we filed 33% more illegal gun possession cases than the next closest year on record, which, by the way, was 2020, because we're seeing more guns out here. I want to send a very clear message, and I know our law enforcement partners are laser focused on this as well. Leave your guns at home. Don't take them with you, especially if you don't have a concealed pistol license. You can't have them in your car. You can't have them concealed in your person. If you're caught with them, you're going to be arrested and you're going to be prosecuted. And that's not us being heavy-handed. It's not law enforcement being heavy-handed. It's trying to save lives, because, again, we've had so many incidents here in Washtenaw County in which, these aren't like drug turf wars where we're seeing gun violence. It's people that get in altercations, road rage incidents, arguments, something that could have ended in a harsh word, somebody flipping somebody else the bird, fisticuffs. That's not cool, but nobody dies from that. But for the presence of that gun, people would have walked away alive. And so sending a really clear message, you're going to be prosecuted for that if you've got an illegal gun or you're carrying a gun that you're not allowed to carry in public. Leave the guns at home. It'll save lives. So I wanted to start with that. And I also wanted to just acknowledge the core work that our dedicated prosecutors are doing day in and day out in the prosecutor's office. We had, just like everybody else in the country, a backlog of cases resulting from COVID. Couldn't do jury trials during COVID because you need to have a jury in person. And we've been extraordinarily busy working through that backlog. And I'm so proud of our dedicated prosecutors for securing convictions in a number of very serious cases over the past several months as courts have really opened back up and these jury trials have gotten scheduled. Secured multiple homicide convictions. We've secured a major human trafficking conviction, sexual assault. We're focused on the crimes that really matter, and we are getting convictions on those cases. But we also know that there are a lot of people out there that have a brush with the law, that may be dealing with a mental health, a substance use issue, something else going on in their lives. And what they need is an off-ramp. What they need is not to have the full weight of the punitive criminal system brought down on them and potentially impacting the rest of their lives, making it hard for them to get a job, to get housing, to continue their education. They need help and they need resources. And we've been working with a number of partners over the past year and a half to build out new diversion programs. And what I love about these is these new diversion programs, they get people access to treatment, to help, to resources. They're individualized, right? We work really closely with probation and community partners, but they take place before somebody even pleads guilty to a crime. So if you do everything right, if you get back on the right track, you walk away without ever having even pleaded guilty to an offense, which opens so many more doors to you moving forward. And by the way, makes us all safer, because the best thing we can do to prevent crime is give people stable jobs, stable housing, a stable life. So you might say, well, is this working? And you might actually think, you can check me on this, you may actually think that these numbers are made up, because I can't believe how well they're working. But with our new diversion programs, including the one that we've been seeing the most cases in, our pre-plea diversion program in Ann Arbor's 15th District Court, we have over a 98% success rate, which means over 98% of those cases, the person does everything they're asked, they go get treatment, they go get help, they do what needs to be done to make things right, maybe pay restitution to a victim of, say, a property crime, right? And they don't commit any new offenses. And they walk away without a criminal record. 98% plus, actually, it's over 98%. So we don't need to always bring the full weight of the criminal system on people. We don't need to tar people for life with a criminal record in so many cases. And the numbers bear that out. And I realize I don't have a ton of time, but I can tell stories too, which are of some of the people that have gone through these and how it's impacted their lives. I'll just briefly say, we had one person, older woman, was stealing groceries, right? And it turns out she needed grief counseling because her husband had recently died. And she was just sort of in a fog and acting out because of that. Got grief counseling, probation set her up with a program. She's doing great. And the week before her case was fully and finally dismissed, she got a 6-figure job offer that she would not have been eligible for had she ever entered a guilty plea. And the probation officer wrote a recommendation letter for her, right? Her life has been changed for the better because she had that opportunity. We need to give people opportunities. Also want to focus on
one more minute, Ellie, and then we got to get going.
Okay.
Really busy program.
All right.
Sorry.
All right. Well, I'll skip over some other stuff, but I'll just mention then one thing that happened this week that I think really demonstrates how well we're working to remedy past wrongs. This week, our Conviction, Integrity, and Expungement Unit secured its first release of somebody from prison for something that they almost certainly did not do, in my view. This was a case that our Conviction Integrity Unit investigated. It was an armed robbery conviction from 2007. And it turned out that not only did new evidence suggest that the person who was convicted for that is in fact much taller than the person on the surveillance video, but the prosecution had committed a constitutional violation by not disclosing relevant evidence to the defense, which would have allowed the defense to impeach the main witness against this person. We have no reason to believe that this was intentional, but we acted swiftly upon learning that information to secure his release. So Ronell Johnson, after serving 14 years in prison after a constitutionally deficient trial, walked out of jail a free man this Wednesday. He was able to surprise his 16-year-old daughter, who has spent virtually her entire life with her father behind bars. She didn't know he was getting out, and he surprised her at a restaurant in Novi. I'm going to link to the Free Press article, which has some of these pictures. They literally made me cry, but I want to say this is a result of our community coming together to right past wrongs. There's been community advocates around wrongful convictions for years here, and a lot of the credit is due to them. Our county board of commissioners decided to fully and permanently fund this unit this November, and the real human stories, the fact that a person is free and with his family today after 14 years is a testament to that work and to our community's commitment to getting things right. So thank you.
We are so blessed to have you, Ellie, and I can tell this group that Ellie is nationally known and nationally recognized for his progressive approach to criminal justice. So we really appreciate you. Thanks so much. I just want to make one very quick statement. In our last newsletter, there was an implication that the Secure My Vote and Let Kids Learn ballot initiatives had not gathered enough signatures, and they did not. However, they are continuing to collect signatures, actually. All they have to, this is the Betsy DeVos scam to siphon tax dollars off into private schools, and also the one that will, basically set us back a century in terms of voting rights and, combating voter suppression. Those groups are still collecting signatures. If they get the threshold that they need, and if they have some that drop off, they can keep, they just have this 180-day window. If they get enough, it goes to the state legislature. That's the only place where Republicans have power now in our state government. They can pass those things into law, and then it bypasses the governor, and we can have these really lousy laws. I mean, beyond lousy laws, really terrible laws on the books without the governor being able to veto them. So please be sure to let people know not to sign the Secure My Vote and Let Kids Learn petitions. They are still gathering signatures. They are still out there lying to people about what they are about. I've heard some of the most outrageous things that they're describing what these things do, and in sharp contrast to what they actually do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Theresa Reid, who's the co-vice chair of our precinct organizing committee, to take it away.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. And that was a perfect introduction because precinct organizing has focused in on getting promote the vote on the ballot. And that is job number one. If we don't do that, democracy dies in Michigan. And I think we know that Michigan would be a bellwether for the rest of the country. We have got to get that petition or that initiative on the ballot, which means getting 425,000 and change valid signatures by July 11th. July 4th is the last date to collect and turn them in, because then scads of people have to go through them and make sure that they're all correct. So we have people going out door to door through the precinct organizing committee. We're hooking people up with their area captains so they can get the petitions and get the walk list and figure out where to go. We're also connecting people with Janet Cannon. Janet, if you're still there, pop in, say hi. Janet Cannon's working with our pal Chuck Newman, who founded the PEG, Protectors of Equality in Government, and they are sponsoring, supporting driveway petition signing events. I had one early. Lots of people have had these, and you'll get, you spend an hour or two and all the petition gatherers come to you, and there were more than 50 people at mine, and people come, and then you can get a bunch of signatures. Another thing we're doing is sending people to just directly to Promote the Vote, who's coordinating the signature gathering statewide. And you can just sign up there and volunteer there, which I also have done, as well as doing it with us, but I've done it there because they have all of the different places statewide to go and collect signatures. So I'll put all those links in the chat. And
well, I will jump in with one thing. I am the one coordinating the petition signing parties, and I have room for people next week. We've got some later on, but anybody wants, just holler. And the other thing that we're really getting a lot of success with, and which everybody can do, is what's called micro circulation, where we sign out a sheet to you. You get 3, you get 5, you get 10 signatures. You've multiplied your signature by 3, 5, 10, whatever.
Right. So I'll put the links to the chat to all of the ways to get involved, and just is super important to do it. And the micro signature gathering is so important because, like, it's your neighbors. Like, just ask your neighbors, have you signed it? Have you signed this one yet? Be sure to sign it, and your family members, and just every signature counts.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Theresa and Janet. Now we're going to start with the candidates corner. We have actually a lot of candidates, and we also have 2 very important panels. So there's a lot to cover in the 2 hours remaining. So I'm going to go down the list from the agenda. The candidates know the order. First up is Representative Felicia Brabeck, District 33. Representative Brabeck, would you please take the mic? Everyone has 2 minutes.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eli. Can folks hear me? Just want to make sure. Okay,
Yep.
Great. Morning, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Felicia Brabeck. I get to currently represent the 55th District, and I'm hoping to represent the 33rd District. So the 33rd District is the bottom part of Ann Arbor, Saline, Lodi Township, and then 1 precinct in Scioto, Ann Arbor, York, and Bridgewater Townships. And so I'm excited and looking forward to doing that. Currently, Washtenaw County has 4 of us who get to represent all of you in the House. But with the newly drawn lines, that number will jump to 7. And also interestingly is that if I am lucky enough to return, would be the only returning member, because our other folks are term limited. So a lot of folks that I've been talking with didn't realize that. So just want to let folks know that during my time in the House, I've really tried to focus on 3 major areas: constituent relations and services, and being really responsive to constituents, policy, and budget. I focus on mental health care, environmental issues, reasonable gun legislation. Our prosecutor and the Congresswoman both talked about that. I introduced a package of bills around background checks and safe storage, both last May and June, that have yet to have a hearing. We keep trying, but our Republican colleagues are blocking that. criminal justice reform, and educational policy. I also currently get to sit on the Appropriations Committee, where I serve as the minority vice chair of the Health and Human Services Subcommittee. So that basically means I'm the Democratic lead for that budget, and it's the largest state budget at $33 billion. And so I am proud to represent us in all of these different areas, and really proud to deeply work on the policy issues and then be really entrenched in the budget. I was also proud to be our lead throughout the state for our mental health care listening tour. And that meant I went both physically and virtually all over the state to talk about mental health care and what we need to do around our system. From those conversations, we know what works well and what we're still working on. And so we have some builds that we're working on now. And people talked with us, we're all working on this. Even being in minority can be really challenging, but even with that, several of my bills have had hearings. And in fact, I'm testifying later this week in the Senate on a mental health care bill that has already left the House. And the other thing I'm really proud of is to have passed a bill during my first year that literally saves Michiganders' lives. So we're going to continue to do all those things. We're going to be out knocking doors for other people and also in the new district, and just looking forward to seeing folks out there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry the time is so short.
I know it's so short.
I apologize.
No, it's okay. Thanks, Eli.
Mayor Richardson from Ypsilanti. Mayor Richardson, the floor is yours. Mayor Richardson, going once, going twice.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I was still muted. I am Mayor Lois Allen Richardson. I'm the sitting mayor, but I'm also running for mayor. And some of the things that we have done in the city is that we have, we're definitely on it for the, at the time of when the pandemic first set in, we were making sure that people were reminded to stay in because many of our people were out and about, and we helped to get some in the neighborhood testing sites. But right now, looking forward, we want to work on housing. Right now, we have a shortage of housing in the city of Ypsilanti. Across the board, we need housing for everyone. We want to see everyone be able to live in housing that they can afford. Yes, we need affordable housing. We need affordable housing across Washtenaw County. And I'm hoping that some of the other municipalities would pick up on that and begin to increase their affordable housing. We are working on 2 developments here in the city that would increase our affordable housing, but we need housing for everyone. There are many people that can afford a little bit more in housing, but we just don't have the housing stock. We're also looking to increase jobs. We want to have increased some jobs by development and making development open, asking that the developers and working them that they would hire local contractors, and not all the contractors from Ypsilanti, but contractors across Washtenaw County that would hire people from Ypsilanti. Our people need jobs, and they need good paying jobs. So we would certainly want to do that. We do have a prevailing wage ordinance, but we'd also want to see jobs come in that would pay union rates. We also, right now, we have been working on I've been working with a group called Community Violence Intervention Team, and we have been rolling out a plan. We've been working since last August on a plan to help curb some of the youth violence, the gun violence in the city of Ypsilanti, the township, and in Ann Arbor, and really wherever it's going on in Washtenaw County. We have met with the county commissioners, and they have endorsed our plan. We will be meeting with a presentation with the city of Ypsilanti on Tuesday, and we're hoping that they will embrace our plan. We will have also have presentation to several other groups. And if anybody on this call that is with a group that would like to hear and have a presentation on what our plan is to help curb gun violence. We just heard the prosecutor talking about gun violence. We've been hearing the news and how it's happening all over. Right here, we're seeing our youth, our 17 to 20-year-olds and even younger being killed, their lives being snuffed out before they even get a chance to begin to live them. So this is important that we begin to do something to stop the gun violence. We are looking
Mayor
forward.
Richardson, your time is up. So I have to ask you to call to a close. I'm
No
sorry.
problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask Chris Taylor, the Ann Arbor mayor, to speak. Christopher Taylor.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful. So I'm Christopher Taylor. I'm the mayor of Ann Arbor, been mayor since 2014, and I'm of course running for re-election. Over the past couple of years, we in Ann Arbor have done what I think all local governments ought to do, and that is work to improve basic services and enhance quality of life. Improve basic services, enhance quality of life. We've done that by maintaining our fiscal house. We have a strong fund balance and an affirmed AA bond rating. We've spent $30 million in change on roads, streets, and bridges and sidewalks. This past year, in fiscal year 21, we had 58 miles of preventative road maintenance. We've worked on pedestrian safety projects. Our police response and fire turnout response are low. And our water treatment plant has full discharge compliance. On quality of life, we've worked on the diversion that the prosecutor just talked about, new bikeways, initiated an unarmed response program, and we've required free menstrual products in all public restrooms. Looking forward, improving basic services and enhancing quality of life will continue, I believe, to be the municipal organization's focus. We are going to fast track road spending with a road bond. We're going to work to modernize our water treatment plant to ensure clean drinking water. We're going to reduce flooding with millions in stormwater improvements. We're going to expand composting and recycling, especially in multifamily homes. We're going to continue to promote equity. We're going to implement an unarmed response safety program to supplement 911, because not every call to 911 is indeed an emergency. We're going to launch the city's first new DEI director. We're going to work to approve and actually build 1,000+ units of new permanent affordable housing, just like Mayor said. On sustainability, we have an ambitious A20 program and plan to achieve community-wide carbon neutrality by the year 2030, and we're going to work doggedly to get there. It's going to be forward-looking and inspirational with respect to our carbon neutrality goal, but it will also include basic services for residents, cost savings, recycling, composting, and of course, clean, reliable energy production. My 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you sticking to the time limit. Ann Bannister, candidate for mayor of City of Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep. Loud and clear.
Okay. What's up, Ann Arbor? And thank you, Washtenaw Dems and Chair Chris Savage for having this forum today. I'm Ann for Ann Arbor, and I'm running so that together we can, in the words of Congressman John Lewis, be good trouble in local government and make a difference in the lives of our community members over the next 4 years. Today, I'm broadcasting live from the 25th Annual Ann Arbor African American Downtown Festival. I urge you to join us. We're here from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. There's music, food, vendors, and a lot of community building. It's some of my unique qualifications to be our next mayor are that I'm a lifelong Democrat and a native son of Ann Arbor. My family moved here in 1974, and I'm a graduate of the Ann Arbor Public School System and of the University of Michigan. I started getting involved in local politics in 2009, where I served as treasurer and co-chair of the Ann Arbor Democratic Party, and also treasurer of Yusuf Rabi while he was on county commission. In 2017 to 2020, I served as a Ward 1 City Council member, and that's where I learned that some of my unique skills in my day job and lifelong career as a financial planner transferred well to serving and representing the residents of Ann Arbor. I don't have time to go over all the points that I would advocate for if Ann Arbor elected me as their next mayor, but they include having inclusivity in everything that we do. I want to work on a robust community engagement as we update our comprehensive plans, including our land use plans. I want to work for exploring more cooperative housing options for all ages, from young people to seniors. I want to work on land stewardship, preserving our mature trees for our sustainability and the value to our ecosystem. So please, in the tradition of Bob Marley, get up, stand up for your rights. Please visit mayor.com and come down and see me today at the African American Downtown Festival. We have a better choice for the next mayor of Ann Arbor.
Thank you very much, Ann Bannister. I'd like to now call Nicole Brown, candidate for mayor in the city of Ypsilanti.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. My name is Nicole Brown. I currently serve as the Mayor Pro Tem and Ward 1 representative on City Council. I really just wanted to share, as an introduction. I started at 15 years old being civically engaged in Ypsilanti, and now almost 20 years later, I am wrapping up my second term on City Council in November. And I'm currently running for mayor of Ypsilanti because at this time, I think it is time to move on to take the helm and lead the community into the future. Some of the things that I have currently worked on over the past few years with my colleagues is supporting barrier busters to expand utility and rent assistance to our residents, collaborating with EMU Engage to provide handmade masks to our community members in the beginning of the pandemic so that we could assure that the other professional masks were allowed for our first responders and our frontline workers, and also helping to decriminalize felony and misdemeanor convictions in our non-discrimination ordinance so that folks have access to jobs and employment and housing within our community. Some of the things that are really important has been said already, housing affordability, jobs for our residents, but also our reproductive rights, as well as non-police crisis intervention, as Mayor Taylor had stated. In Ypsilanti, I've been partnering with one of my colleagues to look at how we can build that out in Ypsilanti as well to make sure that folks' basic needs are met. We know when folks' basic needs are met, then they can meet the other needs that they have in their lives. In my day job, I'm a social worker and a clinical therapist for children at the Children's Mental Health Agency out of Wayne County. And so I'm committed to mental health, equity, diversity, and just making sure that we uplift and build our community and our young folks to have brighter futures. I was one of those young people, and now serendipitous that I am on City Council and working for those same young people going forward for our future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next candidate up is Commissioner Ricky Jefferson. Commissioner Jefferson.
Yeah, good morning. Glad to be here. Thank you for this time. I am Ricky Jefferson. I have been in Washtenaw County all of my life, living in the Ypsilanti area. I'm a GMC Will Run retiree from UAW Local 735 after serving 32 years. In 2010, I became city councilman for one term, and then I became the county commissioner in 2016. Now more than ever, we need to be uncompromising with our leadership. We need more experienced government service because we understand the rising of inflation needs to be strategically handled because of our lower purchasing power, economic shortages, and divided political environment. So Washtenaw County has been doing a lot since the COVID had happened. There were things that needed to be done in Eastern County. I advocated hard for testing to come over here when it first went down, and the disparities were over here with people who were getting sicker and dying more. Also, there were some things that I've done for the YCS. I made a appointment to be able to provide student tutoring at Park Ridge with a $20,000 help for them to get someone to set that up. And also the parks, Riverside Park and Park Ridge Park with the Washtenaw County Road Commission that I sit on that board also, we provided funding for playground equipment, and all through the county, Eastern County, there's some summer programs that we also offer. So I'm just glad to be able to be afforded this opportunity to run for re-election. I've met a lot of people. I've learned how to navigate the things that are interesting and the most important in our county. But thank you for this time. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Jefferson. Thank you for speaking with us. Commissioner Hodge.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us. I'm Justin Hodge. I'm the Washtenaw County Commissioner for District 5, which covers most of Ypsilanti Township and all of Augusta Township. I'm a social worker and an educator, and that's the perspective that I brought to the board. I first ran for county commissioner because I believe that everybody in our county deserves the opportunity to be healthy and to build wealth and to be safe. And I'm running for re-election to be able to continue the work that I've been doing and to make that more of a possibility for people. We know, particularly through the pandemic, the disparities between the different parts of the county and the challenges that people face in the eastern part of the county and the western part of the county and the Ann Arbor area. And I think that, especially because of the pandemic, we've seen how critical it is that the county step up and provide those safety net services that we're known for. And many of you have seen me come and give updates on the work that we've done through public health. And that's been one of my main focuses on addressing some of those health disparities. I worked really closely with the health department regularly and throughout the pandemic to improve our distribution of supplies, PPE, and vaccine distribution, which was a big issue early on. I can also say that one of the things I was really happy to be able to do throughout the pandemic was distribute 30,000 masks personally to different government partners and community organizations throughout my district. A few of the other things I've been able to be successful in pushing forward is the Children's Savings Accounts program that we've talked about. This is a tool that's going to get all kids in Washtenaw County Public Schools access to a college savings account that they can use for trade school or any kind of post-secondary education. We've been able to build equity into this program, and that kids that get free or reduced lunch are going to be able to receive a $500 seed to that account, whereas other kids are going to receive the $25 minimum to start that account. We want to do that to be able to build generational wealth across our county and to help promote equity in different areas. I can go on and on about a lot of the things that we've done and that I want to continue doing, but a few more that I want to point out. Is the Community Priority Fund that we were able to launch, which is the $8 million investment in the 48197 and 48198. That's a historic investment that we have not seen the county do in the eastern part of the county. And I've been really proud to be able to help with shaping that. 2 minutes with fast. You can learn more at votejustinhodge.com, and I'm sure I'll see many of you soon.
Commissioner Hodge, thank you so much for joining us. Next up is Annie Somerville, candidate for Board of Commissioners. Ms. Somerville.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Annie Somerville. I'm running for Washtenaw County Commission in District 6, which is the city of Ypsilanti and parts of Ypsilanti and Superior Township. I currently serve on Ypsilanti City Council and as Chief of Staff to State Senator Jeff Irwin. Every day, I have the honor and privilege to work on issues that I care about and that the community cares about, both at the local and state level, to help other people. A little bit about my background. Growing up, I experienced some pretty extreme periods of poverty. There were points in my childhood where I didn't have access to running water or electricity in my home. And I watched my mom struggle eventually with substance use and homelessness. So that has really shaped the way that I move through the world and the issues that I care about and how I interact with people who need help. I'm running for Washtenaw County Commission because the county is the front line for human services, and to get people the access to the resources they need, they have to understand who the representatives are and what resources are available to them. So I would love to be a gateway to getting people the resources they need to stay whole. I believe that access to food, housing, clean water and healthcare are fundamental human rights. And in Washtenaw County, we are one of the most economically segregated counties in the entire country. And this also plays into housing and accessibility. So I believe that we need to expand affordable housing, increase permanent supportive housing, develop more workforce, attainable housing, and really a greater pipeline for people returning from jail and prison to have access to housing. And lastly, I just want to say, and uplift the fact that abortion rights are local issues. I'm unapologetically pro-choice and pro-abortion, and I'm committed to protecting access to abortion care and other critical reproductive services at the local level. And I just appreciate any and all support, and I'll drop my information in the chat. Thank you.
Annie Somerville, thank you so much for joining us. I'd now like to ask Crystal Light, also a candidate for the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners. Crystal Light.
Good afternoon. My name is Crystal Light. I am running for County Commissioner District 2. That is parts of Superior Township, Webster, Dexter, a little bit of Salem. And so I am excited, and this is my first time running in a political seat. I currently am the chair of the Eastern Washtenaw Democratic Club and the co-chair of the Voice Committee with the Washtenaw Democratic Party. I am currently working with the Clean Slate and the Expungement program, assisting individuals with second chances. And so I am just really excited about pushing to help individuals in that area. And I would like to really implement making sure that we have mental health and physical health wellness available for all of our residents of Washtenaw County, that we can expand that, and making sure that the educational and opportunities and resources are available for all, despite our incomes. I have 2 children of my own, and I have a 3-year-old that's not going to be able to attend preschool because of my income, not because, and I feel that she should be able to receive an education regardless of my income and not have to go. She should be able to receive public schooling. I am just elated and excited, and I am asking for the support of Washtenaw County to vote for a true Democratic candidate. I am true through and through, a native to Washtenaw County, and I am ready to help our residents and our citizens to a better quality of life. So remember, a true Democratic candidate of Washtenaw County. You may visit my website at electcrystallight.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up is Elizabeth Nelson, City Councilwoman for Ward 4 in Ann Arbor. Elizabeth Nelson.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Nelson, and I have served on Ann Arbor City Council representing Ward 4 since 2018. My biggest non-political accomplishment is that I have taught preschool in person since September 2020. I am deeply committed to the idea that our local democracy is stronger when we deal in facts. At higher levels of government, our democracy is in grave danger when a lack of information and aggressive misinformation dominates our political discussions. As Democrats, I believe that we win when the public understands what is actually going on and what elected leaders actually stand for. In 2018, residents told me that they wanted better access to information about the work of council. I observed then that a lot of conversation about local leaders and local policy was simply talking points and generalizations that were not particularly rooted in facts. Since my election, I have worked hard to help our community engage with the work of Ann Arbor City Council, publishing a newsletter to alert residents about the agenda that council is about to vote on, and publishing voting charts so our community can see how everyone voted. I am passionate about how our local democracy can work in a city like Ann Arbor, full of residents with expertise and advocates who push us toward progressive goals. As an elected leader, I look for opportunities to collaborate with residents to solve problems in our community. Expertise and advocacy from residents led me to sponsor progressive policies to expand our supply of affordable housing, protect housing supply in neighborhoods, clean up pollution in our community, increase funding for pedestrian infrastructure, protect tenants from predatory leasing practices, and develop more sustainable options for municipal power under local control. A core principle for me is that the connection between residents and elected leaders should be strongest at this local level. The work of your elected leaders should be most transparent at this local level, where discussion and policy debate happens in public meetings that residents can attend, not in online forums or back rooms in City Hall. Our community deserves thoughtful and serious policy debate, and to achieve that, we must recognize how our democracy is supposed to work. I'm looking forward to continuing to serve Ward 4 on City Council, and to learn more about details of policies that I have championed. You can visit my website at a2elnel.com. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth Nelson, for taking the time to join us. Next up is Cynthia Harrison, but unfortunately, I do not see her in the panelist list. So, Ms. Harrison, if you are there, please unmute. If not, I'm going to move on to the next person, and I'll ask you to join us at the very end of this list of candidates. One more chance.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, now you're on. Perfect.
Yeah. All right. First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Cynthia Harrison, and I'm a progressive Democrat running for Ann Arbor City Council in Ward 1, I was born and raised here in Ann Arbor, and my parents relocated here in the 60s and chose Ann Arbor as a place of welcome, warmth, and opportunity to raise their family. And as they advanced in their careers, we lived in different wards, though I've lived the majority of my life in Ward 1. I know this city inside and out, and I love it. However, as a Black woman who grew up in the city, who watched friends and family be forced to move because the city became increasingly unaffordable, I recognize and acknowledge what can happen when there are a lack of policies and priorities that support equality. A little bit more about myself. I work at the Ann Arbor Center for Independent Living, where I'm a program manager. At the CIL, we support the lives of individuals that live with a disability. This gives me a strong voice for people with disabilities, something that I believe the city needs as City Council updates all of our city services, but especially our parks, which I have had the opportunity to enjoy for a lifetime. I am a wife and a mother of two who has had to advocate fiercely, both in the Ann Arbor public school system and within police and court systems, for a child with learning differences and mental health struggles. I have since continued my efforts to change the system through police oversight, community engagement, and advocacy for those living with mental illness and disabilities. Most recently, I played a role in passing State Senator Stephanie Chang's 2021 legislation to develop mental health crisis response systems that can support our collective well-being without leaving anyone behind. No one currently running has had to navigate the justice and mental health systems in the city of Ann Arbor like I have. And I think it's safe to say that no one currently serving on city council has had to navigate these systems like I have. While I would not wish what my family has gone through on anyone, my lived experience has given me a unique set of lenses and a perspective that I think is very needed at the city council table. I'm a mental health and criminal legal reform advocate. Was that 2 minutes?
That was 2 minutes. Sorry, I know.
Okay. My decision to run for city council in Ward 1 was very deliberate and intentional. And basically, if you want to know more about me, you can visit votecynthiaharrison.com, and I'll put that in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate that. I'd like to ask Chris Watson to unmute. Chris is running for City Council, Ward 2 in Ann Arbor.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. My name is Chris Watson. I'm an Ann Arbor native, and I'm running unopposed in the Ann Arbor City Council primary to represent Ward 2. Through need-based financial aid, I attended high school at Green Hills and left town to study economics at Yale University. I chose to return to Ann Arbor because I love the city I grew up in, and I currently work in data science for the American Mathematical Society in downtown Ann Arbor. Growing up, my parents instilled in me the value of serving others. My father worked until retirement as a forensic psychologist for the state of Michigan, and both my parents inspired me to volunteer in my community. I'm running for city council to keep the same ethos of service at the forefront of city decision-making. One formative moment for me came in high school when I volunteered at the Green Baxter Community Center, an affordable housing community here. I saw the true diversity of Ann Arbor, working with first-generation immigrants, people of color, and seniors. I saw how government made it possible for a new generation of Ann Arborites, many of whom look like me, to be a part of this community and have access to the opportunity it provides. I was raised a Democrat, but this has cemented my belief that government can be a force for good. In that same spirit, I'm running with 3 priorities: providing excellent services to residents, improving affordability and access to housing in our community, and implementing policy to reach our climate responsibility goals. Ann Arborites across the age spectrum are facing the challenges of securing housing, and as a young adult, I've seen these challenges firsthand. I'll fight for affordable housing and to support our vulnerable communities so that our city lives up to the values of diversity and inclusivity. I know the decisions made by Ann Arbor City Council have impacts on neighboring communities in Washtenaw County, and I will work with leaders throughout the county and region to help both the city and county thrive. My goal this primary season is to introduce myself to the ward, listen to the concerns of residents. My hope now is that just as seeing more Black candidates get elected on the national level inspired me at 17 to become the Ward 2 canvas captain on the Obama campaign in 2008, my election to City Council will inspire more young Ann Arborites and people of color to lend their voices to local policy discussions and run for office.
Chris Watson, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time to join us and for staying within the 2 minutes. And I'd like to ask Ayesha Ghazi Edwin, who's a candidate for Ann Arbor City Council, Ward 3, to please unmute.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Ayesha Ghazi Edwin. I'm running for Ann Arbor City Council, Ward 3, because I believe it should never be so difficult for working families just to live and thrive in Ann Arbor. And I want to make our city a more exceptional place to live for everyone. My family immigrated here when I was 3 years old. I grew up here, and it wasn't always easy for us, but we loved how this community just embraced us with open arms and its commitment to diversity. I graduated from University of Michigan School of Social Work with a graduate degree focused on social policy and community organizing. And for the last decade, I've been working in a variety of different social justice areas, essentially helping communities improve by listening to resident needs. I've worked in implementing the Affordable Care Act. I've worked for labor. I was the executive director of an Asian American civil rights nonprofit and a clinic director of an American Indian Alaska Native clinic. And then when I had my first son, I wanted to move my family back to Ann Arbor because I wanted to raise them in a city that's just unapologetic about being inclusive. Currently, I'm the deputy director of a disability policy organization, which is a lens that I also hope to bring to policymaking. I'm an adjunct faculty member at University of Michigan School of Social Work and a proud union member. I'm an Ann Arbor Human Rights Commissioner, and I'm the Governor Gretchen Whitmer appointed chair of the state's Commission on Asian Americans, which is great because we have one of the largest communities of Asian Americans here in Ann Arbor in the state. My plans while on city council is to make our city more affordable. We have an affordability crisis, to make it more equitable. That means racially equitable. That means focusing on our most marginalized. That means reducing socioeconomic inequity and making our city more accessible and inclusive. And as a community organizer, I hope to bring people to the table, people who are actually affected by the issues, to be involved in helping to create solutions. And I want us to continue to be the diverse and inclusive community that my family immigrated to, and that I hope that we can continue to be for my kids and for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to join us. I would now like to take 30 seconds and ask those in the audience who learned about this meeting from the Sun-Times community calendar to use the raised hand function. I'm just taking a brief poll of how much information we got, how much information was disseminated through that source. If you learned about this meeting through the Sun-Times community calendar, please raise your hand. Right, thank you very much. I'd now like to turn to the next part of the meeting, which is a panel for the candidates for judge for the Washtenaw County Trial Court, also known as the 22nd Circuit Court of Michigan. They are Ariane Slay and Marla Linderman Richelew. Would you please unmute and join us? I'd first like, excuse me?
Good morning.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm gonna be formal here. So it's Ms. Slay and Marla Linderman Richelew. First of all, am I pronouncing it correctly? And secondly, is it Ms. Linderman Richelew, or how would you like me to refer to you?
So when we're in court, it's usually Ms. So I think we both should be Ms. And it's Richelew, like the cardinal, but not spelled that way.
Richelew. Is that right? Richelew? Okay, very good. So the ground rules are each candidate will have 7 minutes to make an opening statement. Ms. Richelew will go first. Ms. Slay will go second. Then I will pose some questions. Unfortunately, the first part of this meeting took a bit longer than I had hoped. So there's not going to be as much time for questions as I had hoped. I do have some questions prepared. I will open the floor for 1 or 2 questions from the audience as well before their closing statements. So the first opening statement, Ms. Richelew.
Good morning. I am Marla Linderman Richelew. And first and foremost, I just want to thank you for having this forum. It's so important that we talk about our justice system and we talk about ensuring equity and access to everyone. I also want to recognize the gun violence awareness this weekend. We have been more than aware of the gun violence problem in our world. I thought about what I would want to talk about in these 7 minutes. And I want to talk to you about why I want to be a judge. In my practice, which I do civil rights, I do employment, I get these calls all the time where people are telling me about absolutely horrific, inappropriate racial comments and actions that they have seen in their workplace, sexual assault and harassment that they're going through, being harassed because of their sexual orientation, being denied accommodations that would allow them to keep working, having to ask and fight for unemployment rights that they are entitled to. And in all these calls, everyone who calls me, there's a point where they all say that they're sorry for calling me, that they're apologizing for calling me. I'm not the kind of person who sues. I've never filed for unemployment before. I'm not a complainer. And I take a deep breath. No one should have to apologize for standing up for their rights. Not in any area of law. Not for wanting to be part of their children's lives, not for asking for a work environment that is fair and equitable. So that is one of the reasons of many that I'm running, because I want to make sure that people's voices are heard, that they do not apologize for standing up for their rights. It takes courage to come to court. It is a momentous moment. It can change the direction of your lives and your families. And when you are a judge, every single day, you have to remember that. Every single day, you have to remember that it takes courage to come in. We need to make sure voices are heard. So for 25 years, I've been making sure there's access to justice and equity in employment, in education, in housing, public accommodations. And I want to stop advocating and be part of ensuring on the court. So I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to work with crew and other community leaders to work to rebuild trust in our justice system. We need to ensure that our courts are a safe haven for the people who come into it. I want to work in a plan where the circuit court has every tool possible and available to make sure that no one who is in need of help doesn't receive help. We need to have all the problem-solving courts eventually. It is a great tragedy when someone who is in need of help is not only unable to receive that help, but is punished instead. We really need to work together, and I will reach out to the community. For me, being a judge is not just when you're on the bench. In your free time, you need to reach out to everyone. I like helping people. I want to be part of the solution. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much for those introductory remarks. Ms. Slay.
Everyone, thank you so much for inviting Marla and I to speak with you this morning. As many of our meetings go, we have the same folks every time. So the important part about today's exercise is learning more about us. And then if you like what you hear, you need to share it with your friends. We need to inspire people to get out the vote, and not just for the circuit court race, which is a super important one, but across the board, we need to be voting in November. So inspire others. That is the message of the day. I do want to share a couple things with you that you probably won't get off my website, because we all have internet access. We're here. I want to tell you a little bit more about my personal story and to maybe explain to you what drives me, where my fire comes from. So many of you know I grew up in Ann Arbor, but my dad's family comes to Ann Arbor by way of Kentucky, with a stop in Indiana along the way. And when he was a young child, he and his brother watched his father be lynched. And the folks that lynched him were police officers, also known as the Klan down there in that neck of the woods at that time. And my dad left the very next day, joined Vietnam. He and his brother, upon return, they were both blessed enough to make it home. My dad signed up to be a police officer and a new recruit in Indiana. And he talked pretty poorly about police and police interactions and gave us warning instructions all while growing up, just being Black in America. And I would ask him, if you dislike the police culture so much, why do you work there? And he would always tell me that's a story for when you're older. Well, as I got into my late teens, he told me. He shared why he became a police officer, because he said that he would never let Ron, it's him, or there would never be a Ron or a Bobby who didn't have someone to report to. My dad was left without assurance, without public safety, without trust, and forced him right on out of his home. He didn't go back to the lowlands of Kentucky for over 40 years. And I have that same fire with him. You can make change by complaining about it, by stating your grievances and airing them, or you can get right into the hornet's nest. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And I have been a public servant for almost the entire time, which is kind of amazing to look back and think about it. I have served this community as an assistant prosecuting attorney, where I've led the domestic violence units, and I've prosecuted sexual assault, homicide, drunk driving, you name it. For the last almost 5 years, I have been at the city attorney's office in Ann Arbor, where I've had the ability to really get involved in criminal justice reform, because I'm not about talking about it. I have done it. I ask you to look at my track record and look what I've brought, especially in the last 5 years, to the city of Ann Arbor with a funded expungement program and a diversion program to divert people out of the criminal justice system. And most recently, and thanks to our Ann Arbor City Council, a deflection program to help people before they become justice involved. I've been a member of every specialty court outside of the most new one with Judge Kunke, and I'm looking forward to helping serve in that capacity as well. What I'm asking for is your help as a community to bring transparency and build trust. I think if you are building trust and we are catering to the most marginalized and vulnerable people in our community, everybody else is going to be taken care of. Right now, transparency presents a huge issue for our community. We don't have the opportunity to truly hold our judges accountable because we don't know what they're up to. So one of the things that I do support is the Chief Justice's request is that we have a central information sharing architecture that every court in the state of Michigan is working on, that we have the same system that's public facing, that has real-time data, that can look at how many evictions we're doing, how many sentencings we're doing, who we're doing them of, what are their likely sentences. And so that when it comes time to vote every 6 years for your judges, you can take a look and find out what each judge has been doing. I welcome the transparency. I want you to hold all of our judges, especially myself, accountable. In addition to that, I want to continue the work as justice reform. And you're like, well, Ariane, you're on the bench. How do you do that? It's by addressing each person individually. I will tell you a dirty secret of prosecution and law enforcement in general. It is much easier just to convict people and keep it moving. But if you want real change, if you want systemic change, you have to help people address their root issue as to why they became justice involved to begin with. And that is the most instrumental thing that we need to build together as a community. It will take a village. Locking people up, that is one thing that we have done far too easily in our community. And because it's just easier than taking the time and investing the money in infrastructure, my hat will go off to the Ann Arbor City Council for funding that deflection program. That vision that we will be the first folks in Michigan who are not waiting for you to have police contact before we help you with housing, before we help you with substance abuse disorder, mental wellness, they're helping you get identification. We are going to be there from the beginning. And hopefully that looks like less folks traveling into the criminal justice system. And so I'm really looking forward to watching those programs from the bench. I appreciate the time today. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think a lot of stuff you can learn about Marla and I is going to be on the website. So if you have something that's a driving question you really want to answer, this is why we're here today, to inspire you. We always say, why preach to the choir, right? You're like, we have all these people here. We're obviously engaged in local politics. We're engaged in the democratic process. We do that so that you sing. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you guys today.
Thank you both very much for those moving opening statements. I have collected a number of questions in advance of the meeting. I'm going to pose a few of them, and then I'm going to open up the floor. So first, you've had very different paths to this point in terms of your experience as lawyers. So I'd like to ask you both, and Ms. Slay will answer first, and then Ms. Richelew. How important is it for the individual elected to this position to have had significant experience trying criminal or civil cases, or cases of both kinds? The judge, the person who fills this position, will be trying both civil and criminal cases. So Ms. Slay, would you please go first?
Thank you. Well, I think it is important. And what I bring to you is a large trial resume. I've tried over 200 cases, albeit most of them criminal, but I've also served as counsel as defense and plaintiff on behalf of the city of Ann Arbor in nuisance actions, and several things in district and circuit court. I think that's important, but I think probably the more important question is does this person have the temperament to be on the bench? Marla and I both bring great legal resumes behind us and extensive legal knowledge and writing. That's easy. We have to also look at temperament though too. When you are going to court for the first time, or whether it's your first or 15th time, very few times is that ever going to be for a positive thing. We have adoptions, we have weddings, right? But other than that, somebody is going because there's a dispute. And when you have two disputing parties, you can't add in a third and expect to be productive or justice to follow. So you need to have somebody who's willing to be compassionate, who will take time, and who's willing to de-escalate situations so that we can really just look at the facts so that everybody has the opportunity to be heard in court.
Thank you so much. I should have mentioned that there are 2 minutes allotted for answering each question. Ms. Richelew.
Thank you. And I want to thank Ann. We've been working together to make sure that this is a positive campaign. We do need to inspire everyone, and we do need to work together. So I do want to thank you, Ann, for your nice comments about me too. Thank you. So I have tried many cases in many different venues, in different courts. And I think it's important that there's trial experience. But I have a hard time saying that we need to have trial experience in every area of law, because it was not disqualifying for Judge Kunke or Judge Connors, and they came in with real civil background, civil trial experience, and they're stellar. They're wonderful. I do think that it's really important that you've tried cases throughout Michigan. So you've been able to see the best practices of many courts at the district court level, at the circuit court level. I think it's also important that you've done appellate work, because when you're writing opinions as a judge, you need to know your judges in the Court of Appeals. You need to know how they think, because you want your opinions to matter. You want them to be upheld. So that is what I would say. The most important thing is a variety of experience. And just, I do agree with judicial temperament. Someone who's going to be there every day and see people as individuals and make sure that they are treated with respect and dignity.
Thank you so much. I'd like to ask now a question that was posed by someone who responded to my solicitation for questions. Please share with us a personal story about a core value that you hold and how you used it to make a difficult decision. So this time, Ms. Richelew goes first, and then Ms. Slay.
Okay. So years ago, I represented a woman who was living at the YMCA. And the city of Ann Arbor evicted her because of her disability. She was allergic to many cleaning products. Instead of dealing with this, the city kicked her out. And it was Christmas. And I would not let the city hall, Ann Arbor City Hall, close until they rectified that wrong, until they made sure that she had a place on Christmas Eve and Christmas, that she was not homeless. They did that. I think it shows that I don't care who you are, I'm always going to be in favor of equity and fairness. It also shows that I do not give up. I had 104 fever and ended up in the hospital, but I was not going to go and let my client be on the streets.
Thank you very much. Ms. Slay.
Thank you. I actually think about this experience very frequently because I still have occasion to go to a real courtroom every once in a blue moon. And there was a young man who came out. He was in custody. He was still wearing the clothes, whatever he was arrested in, hadn't been down to the county jail yet. And he was there for a crime, driving with the license suspended, something that doesn't affect public safety in the least. And he was very young. He looked incredibly nervous. And he came in front of the judge and he said, "I'm ready to plead guilty. I just want to go home." And it broke my heart. And I was like, and it was somebody who had a city case. And I walked up to him and I said, "Your Honor, may I speak with him?" I said, would you like an attorney? And we go through the whole thing. And he's like, "I don't want an attorney. I just want to plead guilty and go home." And I was like, "You're going to go home regardless. Like, I think you should have an attorney." And he and now another defense colleague and I had the opportunity to speak with him and letting him know that the only reason that he was there is he had one last stage of his driving test that he still had to take, and he never showed up for court. And it would have been really easy just to let that whole process go on. Everybody's done 15 minutes, but instead we stayed with him for 45 minutes. We drug everything out throughout the day because I think the core value that I will bring to me to the bench is compassion, is to understand that not everyone's life experience is the same. I bring perspective that I understand what it's like to be afraid of law enforcement. Even with a dad who was a police officer, I understand that the community has very little, if any, trust in the criminal and civil justice systems. And so being that perspective, bringing compassion, meeting people where they are, I'm committed to building trust, not rebuilding it, because I'm not sure for some of us, we've probably never had it. But we'll do that one decision at a time, day after day, docket after docket. That will help in our community in the long run.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask one more question. Ms. Slay will go first in answering it, and then I'll open it up to questions from those attending. I have a few more questions if those attending are shy about asking their own. So, in what circumstances would you release individuals who have been arrested before trial? What criteria would you apply? Are there particular circumstances that would lead you to be more or less likely to approve pretrial release? Ms. Slay.
Okay. Well, there is already guidance on it. There's a court rule at 6106, subsection F. That's a statement and reason and what you look at. These things are what you're supposed to look at to determine if someone should be released or not. 99% of the time, that decision is going to be made before it would get to the circuit court. All criminal cases actually start down in the district court. They are seen by a judge or magistrate there, for which they determine what the bond is. However, at every hearing, or sometimes by extra motion, the judge has the opportunity to review if there is a monetary bond or any conditions to make sure that they're appropriate. First and foremost, I do not believe that anyone who does not present a danger to the community should be incarcerated. That's the simple answer. We look at, is there a safe alternative for somebody to be in the community? Do they have the community supports they need to be safe so that they're not going to hurt themselves? There are tens and thousands of other things that we can do besides incarcerating somebody and breaking up a family. People should not be in jail for driving with license suspended and retail frauds and all these nonviolent things. Could we consider getting them substance abuse disorder help if that's what they're struggling with? Is housing an issue? We need to work collaboratively as a community, which thankfully the city of Ann Arbor just took up the charge on doing that, is to helping people for finding whatever it is their root issue and addressing that so they can stay safe and stay with their family, stay working, stay in their housing. Sometimes just a couple of days in jail can result in the loss of employment or loss of housing or loss of additional benefits. So we need to be very cognizant of treating people as individuals.
Thank you. Ms. Richelew.
Thank you. As Ann said, a lot of the decisions about this happens before they get to the circuit court. But I think this question really gives us an opportunity to talk to you about what we will consider in every decision that comes before us. We need to check, we need to take the time and make sure if it's a criminal matter that the public is safe and the person is safe. We have to consider everyone involved in the process. It is true. Sometimes when you put people in jail, they're going to lose their job. And we need to make sure we're not doing that without a reason, because there's no safety nets. Right now, in front of the Supreme Court, there's a question: if you lose your job because you're in jail, innocent until proven guilty, can you get unemployment if you lose your job even? These are the things that we have to consider every single time. How is it going to affect people's families? How is it going to affect the community? What can we do to help people? How do we make sure that court is not a debtor's prison? We need to see the people as whole people. We need to see them as members of the community who we care about. And that's what I would do.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to open the floor up to questions from the audience. If you have a question, if you would just please raise your hand. Use the raised hand function. Sometimes it's at the bottom of your screen under raise hand. And if you click on that, you'll jump to the top of my list and I'll call on you. And while you're thinking about a question, I'm going to ask another one since no one has raised their hand. Again, one that I've been asked to pose. Should the Freedom of Information Act apply to judges? And I think Ms. Richelew is going to take this first.
So this is my one-word answer: consent. We can release anything as long as we have consent of the parties. And I think that we do need accountability. I think that judges need to be held accountable. And that means that we have to make things public. We need to do it in a way that we're protecting the people, right? We don't want to give out social security numbers or driver's license numbers where their identities can be stolen. But you should know what we're doing. And we know that most parties want judges to be accountable. So what I think, while the legislature gets to decide if the Freedom of Information Act is going to apply to judges, is that we can take some matters into our own hands and ask people for consent to allow us to be accountable, to get that information out. And that's what I would like to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Slay.
I will charge all of you who are attending to tell 3 people to contact our friends in Lansing and support SCAO. That's the State Court Administrator's Office. That's the administrative arm of the Michigan Supreme Court. Support their funding requests to get this data system off the ground. It's going to be a heavy lift. It's going to be expensive. SCAO's never asked for this much money, but you know what? They need it. And then we can't be truly transparent without it. FOIA will help to a certain extent. If FOIA is not going to be able to give us the data that we want so that we can look and see if there's disparities on how we are treating our most marginalized folks, because we aren't collecting that data. If anyone has ever played the Oregon Trail, when you were like maybe early 80s, it was a black and green computer screen. That is very similar to what the court systems look like in Washtenaw County. They can't aggregate data. They can't give us the ages of average people who were recently sentenced or races or anything like that. We need a system that can give data that's public facing. That would help. That actually promotes transparency. We can't, under FOIA, we can't give you what we don't have. So this new public system is designed to answer all the questions that our community wants to know. And are judges doing the right thing? How do we hold them accountable? By calling right now, because that is still up for vote. We're hoping by the time the election rolls around that we're going to get a big yay from the from both parties, and this is the money that we need. So if you want to support that, or you believe that FOIA and transparency in the courts is important, make the email, make the phone call.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dyer raised her hand. I see the hand down. Would you like to ask a question? You should be able to unmute.
You guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering if they could talk about how they plan on implementing restorative justice on the bench, and specifically what their support for restorative justice in the courts would be.
Thank you very much. I think Ms. Slay will go first with that, and then Ms. Richelew.
So restorative justice, for those of you who don't know, is the process of making sure that everyone is, one, accountable for your actions, and two, that justice comes in many different forms, so that we find a resolution or a disposition to something where everyone who has been aggrieved can come to a consensus. You get more buy-in, it promotes healing. This is a process that we should be doing. To let you know that I'm not just talk about it, this is actually what I've started using mediation in civil cases for deflection at the city of Ann Arbor. We've also been sending some to the Dispute Resolution Center. I have found that there is an opportunity for not just resolution pre-case for use restorative justice, but even post-judgment. And I do support post-judgment restorative justice, because people heal in different waves and different times, and we have to meet people where they are. So I do think that is appropriate. Of course, we would always look at the Crime Victims' Rights Act, because that's part of our Michigan Constitution, so we won't run afoul with that. But when we have consent and when we have willing parties who are able to do that, I will encourage that from the bench. That will hopefully be led by Madam Defender, Ms. Simpson, and our prosecutor, Mr. Savit.
Thank you very much. Ms. Richelew, same question.
Thank you. So for me, one of the things I always think about is that it used to be justice of the peace. And I think we need to bring the peace back in. We've been making it so that justice is way too synonymous with punishment. And I've been trying to do boots on the ground with some of the restorative justice programs, the Road to Restoration, working with expungements, making sure that I understand truly how these processes are working. I think that we really do need to make efforts to include restorative and rehabilitative programs. Like I said, it is my goal, and it will take a while, to make sure that the circuit court has every single problem-solving tool in their tool case, because it is so important. But we also need to educate people about this process. Ariane was great about explaining what restorative justice is. We need to do that. We need to go to our schools. We need to go to our community. We need to let them know why it's so important. Because if we can get everyone to buy in, then we can strengthen our community. We can provide services to everyone who needs it. So I am 100% in favor of it. I'm going to work my tush off on it. And I put my boots on the ground to make sure that I am part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tyrone Bridges also has a question. I've unmuted him. So Ms. Richelew is going to answer first, and then Ms. Slay. Mr. Bridges.
Yes. How would you address the gun violence in Washtenaw County?
So I'm going to have to be very careful in how I answer this, because gun violent offenses will come in front of us. But I'm not sure if you're aware, when you ask that question, that I am a survivor of gun violence, myself and my kids. So I have seen it firsthand. I understand how mental health plays a role in it. There's a part of me that wishes that I could get involved at the legislative arena to talk about having safe rules to protect our society. But when people come in front of me, what I'm going to have to do is look at the whole person and see what is going on there and try to give them help. I can't tell you exactly how I'm going to rule on gun violent offenses, but in every aspect, I am here to work with the community. I will do what needs to happen. I will talk to people. I will share my story, because I think it's important that people understand how prevalent it is, how life-changing it is. And I think we need to have those discussions openly, calmly, and make change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Slay.
Thank you for your question. And I think it's kind of twofold. Gun violence and decreasing it in our community and across the country is going to come in two different tracks. One, and I can say this from my personal opinion, I can't share what my opinion would be as a judge, but we need to get rid of assault weapons. They shouldn't be available for everyone. That's my personal opinion. But what we really need to do is address mental health issues as well. And so we, as a community, just dealt with a loss of a community member in the last 24 hours who, chose to end his life with a gun. And that was a very public thing. And so we all mourn the loss for him and his family today. When we look at the mental health crisis as a judge, what I can do is to make sure those who have mental health needs, that those are being addressed first and foremost. I can tell you from my perspective now as a city attorney, I've been working with all of the judges in the district court and some in the circuit court to come up with a 24-hour solution to being able to help people get mental health services in the middle of the night. Right now, those services are available banker's hours. And guess what? People have mental health issues 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there needs to be a judge who is available to answer that phone call and get the petition signed so that somebody can be taken to a point of safety at a hospital where they should be, not in the jail. So I'm working right now with some of the judges to make sure that that is a possibility going forward. Our chief judge is very receptive to the idea, and thankfully Judges Valvo and Simpson have volunteered on the district bench to help get that process started as well. So I will be committed to that as a judge to continue that process to be available for our community. In addition to that, we are also considering other things to get weapons off the streets right now in Ann Arbor, like a gun buyback program. I know it doesn't decrease the violence, but any unsecured gun in a home that is not needed shouldn't be there. Oh, excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we actually have now reached the end of this panel. And so there is a time for each candidate to make a 2-minute statement. And now, if I remember correctly, Ms. Slay goes first and Ms. Richelew is second. Ms. Slay.
Okay. Our time is never enough. I hope you feel inspired enough to take the opportunity to take a look at slayforjudge.com, to email me. I will put my horsepower in the chat for you. If you have the opportunity to follow on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, ask your questions, be vocal. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It has been my pleasure to serve this community for almost 2 decades. I'd like to be able to continue to serve in this other capacity for which I feel I'm best suited for. Thank you so very much. I wish you all a safe weekend and bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Richelew.
Thank you. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And we need strong judges who understand what it's like to lose a job, to experience discrimination, to be the victim in equity, and to have our voice not heard. Because we need judges who are going to make sure that the scales of balance, the scales of justice are equal, no matter how rich or poor, no matter if you're a minority, no matter what. Everyone deserves to be treated fairly. They need to be heard. That is what I think needs to happen. And I do believe I am the best candidate for that. With my experience from district court to Supreme Court and all the other courts in between throughout the state, I really know what the best practices are. I'm a see something, say something, do something person. And if you go to my website, which I hope you do, you're going to see what I've been able to accomplish in my career. But most importantly, I just want to be a member of our community. I want to make sure that the court is bridging out and working with all of our safety net organizations, with our schools, with our churches and synagogues, with you. Because that's how we make change. Together, we're stronger together. So thank you for your consideration and your vote.
Thank you very much. I want to thank both candidates for joining us. I'd like to point out this segment of the monthly meeting will be available on YouTube, also accessible through the Washtenaw Dems website, probably from early this coming week. I think this is a very inspiring serious discussion and show it to your children as they learn about what the courts do. Thank you very much, and the kind of people who become judges. I'd like to next invite the panel of candidates for the 14th Senate District. So we have with us today Commissioner Sue Shink from the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, and also Ms. Kelsey Heckwood. Unfortunately, a third candidate, Val Cochran-Toops, did not respond to my invitations to join us today. I looked, I didn't see her in the list of panelists. If she's here, I invite her to raise her hand. But we will proceed with the candidates who we have. So as agreed upon beforehand, we'll start with a 7-minute introductory statement, just as we had with the judges panels. And I'd like to first start with Commissioner Shink. Commissioner Shink, you have 7 minutes.
Thank you. I'm just going to set my stopwatch so that I don't go over. Hi, so I think most of you know me. I'm Sue Shink. I am the commissioner for District 2. I was first elected in 2019. I served as chair of the working session, which is where we learn about issues and kind of keep an eye on the future. So I've been in leadership the entire time that I've been on the Board of Commissioners. My colleagues, your other commissioners, elected me to be chair of the board. I took office in that regard on January 6, 2021, during the height of the pandemic. So it's been a tumultuous time on the board, and I'm really proud of the work that we've been able to do. I came in on a platform of preserving land and reforming the Washtenaw County Road Commission. And we've been able to make great strides on that. We renewed our natural areas preservation millage, a conservation millage, and the Road Commission is much more responsive and has greater public engagement than ever before. But there are a lot more issues. During the pandemic, we worked really hard to get the supplies most in need. In the beginning of the pandemic, it was very difficult to get any supplies. I actually went out and bought those things with my own money and got them to people who could not vote for me because I knew that lives needed to be saved. I then worked with our racial equity officer, who I was also instrumental in hiring, to make sure that the most vulnerable residents had what they needed, whether it was detergent or food or Tylenol or menstrual supplies. We worked hard to keep all of our county employees employed during that time. As you might remember, there were many businesses who were laying off people, and we didn't do that. We knew that people were part of our team, and we kept them on. I worked closely with Superior Township Treasurer and Pastor Larry Davis and other faith leaders and local leaders and residents to make sure that people who weren't getting what they needed got what they needed. So there were some tough conversations, listened, and then acted and made sure that we got vaccination to especially our older African-American residents. They weren't in the information loop. We got them in the information loop. We got them what they needed. I worked closely with U of M, with Eastern, with Ann Arbor schools, and with the governor's staff to make sure that we had what we needed. U of M was really sucking up all the supplies, and we had to fight to get more. But, even during a pandemic, policies needed to move forward. I'd already been working on climate action from the moment I came into office. And I actually I ended up taking some classes on how to make a climate action plan happen and how to do it myself so that I could figure out all the pieces that we needed to bring together, work closely with the people that we had appointed to the Environmental Council, Commissioner Morgan, community activists. We got our residents rallied around, all the pieces in place within the organization. We are now climate action planning. We are going to have a carbon neutral county by 2035. And we also are bringing in all the townships to work with us. So if you haven't already heard this, my style is basically to loosen resources, get them out into the community, remove barriers to building capacity, and then working with everybody who can bring something to fruition. Some of the other issues that I've been working on are increasing safety net services. We recently allocated $3.5 million to safety net providers in this county. as well as created through the ARPA funding, an $8 million community priority fund. I worked with some of you to make that happen. Got a lot of community input, more than ever before, even during the height of the pandemic, to figure out really what does our community need, particularly in Ypsilanti, where resources have been systematically denied to people for many, many years. We are changing that equation. Was able to also get children's savings accounts started. It will double the number of kids going to college or trade school. They'll have options. It changes kids' view of what their possibility is. It changes the family's view of what the possibility is. We've also gotten more mental health services, more physical health services out into the locations where people need them. That means in Ypsilanti, in Manchester, in Northfield Township. I'm pointing in the direction of the map. Also got money for the Conviction, Integrity, and Expungement Unit. We talk a lot about justice in the criminal legal system. It's one thing to be in favor of it. I assure you, it's really hard to make it happen. Finding the money for the expungement unit has paid off already. We've had many expungements, and the first exoneree just left prison. So that was somebody who was wrongly convicted, and they're out of prison now because I worked my butt off to find the money to pay for that Conviction and Integrity Expungement Unit. Gun violence, been working with Derek Jackson from the Sheriff's Office, community representatives, Florence Roberson, Daryl Johnson, Gail Wolkoff, and we have a 14-point plan. We've already allocated money. We have ex-felons who are working with young people who are at high risk of gun violence, removing barriers and paving a path for those young people to deal with their trauma and become much more productive. A lot of the would-be shooters are just, they're leaders, but they're not leading in the right direction. And so we're able to help them find a better way. Obviously, it's not going to solve it completely, but we're on our way. Got broadband, we're getting broadband to every household in this county. And for those who can't afford it, we've got money. When I go to the Senate, I will work to protect voting rights, civil rights, both reproductive rights and gender orientation rights, climate justice, safe water. We need more court reforms from the state level, and we need more investment in our educational system so that every single person in our state has an opportunity to be safe, to build wealth, and to be healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kelsey Heckwood.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. I want to start out just sort of by introducing myself. I think one of the reasons that this race is really interesting is because we have these new communities that haven't had an opportunity to work together or to really know each other. And so I want to start at the beginning. I was born and raised in northern Lower Michigan. My mom was a single mom and a waitress, and I was a sick kid. And so we relied heavily on things like Medicaid and food stamps to get by. I went to Head Start and went to public school. I went to McBain Rural Agricultural School. It's a K through 12 school in rural northern Lower Michigan. And I became the first in my family to graduate from college. So in 2014, I left Central Michigan University with a degree in sociology. I loved sociology. I loved to think about how we organize ourselves as a society and how systems operate. And it was really important to me to think through the reason that that things are the way that they are and how we might be able to move levers to change outcomes. So it was 2014, and I had no idea what to do with a sociology degree. I had a friend who was working on a Democratic state representative campaign up in Mount Pleasant, and I jumped on and sort of caught the campaign bug, as they say. And so that is how I was connected to Gretchen Driscoll's campaign. So I worked for Gretchen Driscoll in her first race. I was brought on in early 2015 and moved to Ypsilanti to sort of work and help to build that campaign out. When we got there, we discovered that the 7th Congressional District, which is very large at that time and covers a lot of territory in Southeast Michigan, there was no one on Gretchen's campaign who knew anyone in Jackson. And Jackson's the largest municipality in the 7th District and has the largest concentration of Black voters. And we didn't have a contact. And so I volunteered, raised my hand. I moved over here in 2015. I worked on a local race, a slate of candidates running for city council. I got very involved in the Democratic Party. I was first elected as secretary of the Jackson County Democratic Party in 2015, about 3 months after I moved to the county, because there were so few people who were involved that they had a lot of trouble finding officers. I've been involved in the county party ever since. I've organized many a protest outside of Tim Wahlberg's office downtown Jackson. I used to actually be able to walk to his office from my apartment. Responsible for Jackson, Branch, and Hillsdale counties in 2016. I don't know if anyone else knocked doors in Hillsdale County in 2016. It was not the most fun time I've ever had. I actually spent election night 2016 at that party in Chelsea, which was also a very difficult time. So we're going to move right by that. So post 2016, I had spent almost 2 full years on this congressional race that I really cared about. My entire career had been working for progressive Democrats. And we were in a pretty dark spot, and I was out of money. I remember very vividly having $167 in my bank account. And so I did what I always do when I have no money. I bartended. I got a job at Outback Steakhouse. And then I very generously had the option to apply for and was hired in at to be a legislative aide in Jeremy Moss's office. So I have done a full cycle of constituent relations, worked with different organizations and departments at the state government level, have a very strong point of view and an idea of how I would run a state legislative office, having seen that and been part of that. And then in 2017, we fought for a non-discrimination ordinance in Jackson. And during the public comment of that non-discrimination ordinance, I publicly came out as bisexual. It was really inspiring and moving time. I was offered a position at America Votes, which is a statewide political organization where we do data and strategy for progressive issue organizations. So if you've ever worked with Voters Not Politicians or Promote the Vote or LCV or Planned Parenthood or ACLU, it's likely that I helped to cut some of the turf that you knocked, or put that data back in after that was over. So I organized my workplace in 2020. I served on the bargaining committee up to my last day on the job in 2015. So issues of workers' rights and having a vote, having democracy in our workplace are really important to me. And then I was appointed to city council in 2018 and was able to pass some pretty progressive stuff in the birthplace of the Republican Party. Things like an environmental commission, housing affordability legislation, operating a needle exchange in Jackson, building consensus and coalitions, just like we'll need to do in Lansing. And now we have these new maps that are a completely new opportunity. So we've worked really hard over the last decade to flip the city of Jackson. We now have the first Black mayor in the city's history, a majority person of color city council, a majority woman city of council, but there's nowhere else for people to go. They can't get up higher, but these new maps change that. I'll end saying that there has not been a Democratic state senator from Jackson since 1894. 1894, 130 years since a Democrat from Jackson has represented Jackson in the state Senate. This may be our only shot, and that's a big reason why I'm running for office.
Thank you very much. I'd like to pose a few questions to both of you. And following the system of rotation, Ms. Heckwood, by the way, do you prefer to be Ms. Wood, Ms. Heckwood?
I prefer to be Kelsey, but if you're going to be formal, Ms. Heckwood, I guess is fine.
Okay, I'm going to be formal. All right, so Ms. Heckwood will answer first, then Commissioner Shink will answer second. It's impossible for state representatives and senators to be experts in every area. It's just overwhelming. If you were elected, what are the issues on which you will focus in particular?
Sure. So one of the most important things I learned while serving on city council is that people are already experts in their field. The city engineer knows what they're doing. The director of the rec center knows how to best serve the community. What they needed from me was the resources to do their jobs well. I fundamentally believe that the job of a state legislator is to get people the resources that they need to live full lives. To me, that means things like affordable childcare, a living wage, clean water to drink and clean air to breathe, safe communities, great schools, those sort of values. If I'm elected, my job will be to rely on experts in all of those fields to tell me what they need. It'll be to build authentic and trusting relationships with constituency groups so that they feel like they can come to their state senator and ask for what they need. And then my work, my job will be to get budgets passed that actually reflect those priorities. And I think that is the sort of expertise that I bring, is working with difficult colleagues to pass things that nobody thought we could pass. And that's how I'll handle that sort of expertise question.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Shink.
Thank you. I would say that, yeah, it's true. We're not experts in everything. My tenure on the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, during my tenure, we've been able to pass quite a few policies. And so I have become expert in quite a few things, and I've become an expert in negotiating and bringing stakeholders together, in building coalitions and negotiating the fine points when you've got one person who wants A, B, and C, and one person wants A and B, but you've got to get C in there. How do we build that? How do we build that equation? And so I also have a lot of connections in Washtenaw County and across the state. I've worked closely with SEMCOG. I am vice chair of the Transportation Coordinating Committee. I've got a list of the committees that I'm on my resume that's several inches long. And so all these connections are going to serve me well when I go to Lansing and work for our communities. I've also been a township trustee in Northfield. So yeah, no, not going to be an expert in everything, but definitely have a lot of connections and keeping a list of who's an expert in our community who can help me when we get to a place. The other thing that I would say is that when legislation is being developed, it's really important to have all the stakeholders at the table, because if you don't, then you're not going to get legislation that addresses all the needs, and it's not going to work as smoothly as we need it to. So yeah, lots of moving parts, but it's an important time to make sure that those parts keep moving and that we get everybody at the table and get some good legislation passed.
Thank you very much. So next question, Commissioner Shink will be the first to answer. And this was suggested to me. What have you done, and I think most importantly, what will you do personally in your own home and life and in your work and your life as a representative in Lansing to mitigate the effects of climate change, to make our community more resilient and sustainable for the future? Commissioner Shink.
Thank you. Yeah, so I have a degree in resource policy and analysis and wrote one of the first theses on sustainability at what is now the School of Environment and Sustainability. It's hard to believe that there was a time when professors there said, I don't know enough about sustainability to advise you. Not the case now. So we've got the solar panels. I've been planting many, many oak trees. I've worked in land preservation since the mid-90s. Between 10 and 18,000 acres have been preserved, thanks in part, because it's a team effort, in part to the synergy that we've created together. At the county, dove deep into the workings of the county. We have a climate action plan going. It would not be happening without my and Commissioner Morgan's participation. And so that is aimed at reaching carbon neutrality in our county by 2035. At the same time, we have a process happening in our county where we're reducing our carbon emissions by changing out our light fixtures and other fixtures that will reduce our carbon emissions by 1/3 by the end of the year. Also working on our fleet policy so that we'll be reducing our carbon emissions there. And then, of course, cooperating with the city of Ann Arbor and townships across the county. And I do want to add one little thing. I will be focusing on a whole bunch of things at the county, at the state, but I do think it's important. We've got to preserve voting rights, and that is one of the things that's really important for sustainability and climate change, because if we don't keep our voting strong, we're not going to be able to make the changes that are needed.
Thank you very much. Ms. Heckwood.
So I am proud to have advocated for and voted to create an environmental commission in Jackson, and I've served on that commission since its inception. In those 4 years, it's very new, we have created and passed an environmental action plan, and that plan centers carbon reduction goals, a lot of land use and land use plans, and a focus on community engagement and environmental justice. We updated a noxious weed ordinance, we've recommended an urban farming ordinance, and we're working to modernize our refuse and recycling collection to incentivize more recycling and composting. We know, unfortunately, that big corporations are by far the biggest polluters, and that addressing climate change is truly a global issue. At the state level, there are some things we can do, particularly around the reintroduction of polluter pay legislation, working towards new transit goals that focus on biking and electric vehicles and more accessible transit options for commuters. I've worked really closely with environmental organizations in my time at America Votes, and I'm proud that I've received the endorsement of Clean Water Action for my campaign. And then, I mean, outside of like the concept of democracy, climate change is the issue that is impacting us all, and it should be treated with the urgency that demands.
Thank you very much. So next question, I'll ask Ms. Heckwood to speak first, and then Commissioner Shink. So the experience of school closures during the pandemic has led to bitter debates among local Democrats on the issue of how much autonomy school boards should have in deciding whether to move public education online. In the state budget adopted last summer, my understanding, and signed by Governor Whitmer, this autonomy was limited. A state waiver is now required to move entirely online, at least it was this past year. Do you have any views on the subject of how much state oversight there should be of local autonomy with respect to school closures? Ms. Heckwood.
Sure. I'll start with saying that I'm generally supportive of local control and would be really interested in addressing preemption laws at the state level that prevent local communities from, enacting the will of the people, really. I'll say that no one did the pandemic right. We all made a lot of mistakes. I think one of the biggest mistakes broadly was not using spring and summer of 2020 to retrofit school buildings with state-of-the-art air filtration and HVAC systems, which would have put people to work in relatively safe conditions during sort of like the height of the shutdowns and brought students back to safer buildings. Here in Jackson, it was really important to get students back to school because a not insignificant number of kids were hungry. Half of kids in Jackson live under the federal poverty line, and 80% of kids in Jackson qualify for free or reduced lunch. Another problem I think that we're coming out of the pandemic with is a lack of trust in institutions. So different branches of our government, different departments, different levels were fighting and contradicting each other and giving information that people didn't really know what to trust. So I think one of the most important things we can do is elect a Democratic Senate so that Governor Whitmer has a chamber to back her up rather than Mike Shirkey and Lana Tice just like spouting this week's latest conspiracy theories.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Shink.
Thank you. I think that local control is very important. And during the pandemic, we could see in different parts of the state that different schools were taking different approaches to protecting their students and continuing to educate them. One of the things that we were able to do in Washtenaw County to make sure that kids could stay home and stay safe is to make sure that food was available. So we made sure that parents could come and pick up food or even pass it out. I mean, I know Commissioner Hodge especially did a lot of work on that part. And then also we distributed hotspots. They weren't enough. That's one of the reasons why it's so important that we are making broadband available to everybody across the county. But I did see a remarked change in Governor Whitmer's focus on what schools could and couldn't do, as well as our legislators, our legislative electeds' viewpoint on what schools should and shouldn't do after Governor Whitmer's emergency powers were removed from her. And so it is important that our governor have a legislature that supports her to make better decisions. At the same time, it is really important that schools have control over what they do. Now, one of the things that I've been hearing that is really disturbing as I've been knocking doors is that a lot of parents of young people with developmental disabilities are saying that their children only got maybe 2 hours a day and sometimes even less of education during the pandemic, and that some of that's persisted even now. I'm really concerned about that. And one thing that we do need to make sure is that there's a minimum level of what kids are receiving to make sure that they're getting what they need. Because if they're not getting what they need, they're not going to be thriving. And even during the pandemic, it's fair to expect that people thrive. And so, yeah, it's a tough situation, right? There's a bit of there's going to be a lot of negotiation around that going forward, I am sure.
Great. Thank you very much. One more question for me, then I'll open it up to the floor. This is to Commissioner Shink. So I've seen flyers claiming, actually, I think this one should really start with Ms. Hickwood. I'm going to change the usual order. I've seen flyers claiming that the Jackson County Democratic Committee, the local Democratic Party, has endorsed you in this race. The Washtenaw County Democratic Party's bylaws, section 9.1, prohibit it from making endorsements in any Democratic primary that is contested. The Jackson County Democratic Committee's bylaws in section 10.8 used to have this rule. I understand that's been changed. One reason for the rules, I assume, is to promote the unity of the party in the general election. So I'd like to ask first Ms. Hickwood why the Jackson County Democratic Committee changed its approach. And then I'd like to ask both candidates if you think that having Democratic county organizations endorse candidates in contested Democratic Party primaries is a good idea. Ms. Hickwood.
Sure. So I'll take the first part of that question and then we'll split up and both be able to answer the second part. Okay. So first, I'll say again that there hasn't been a Democratic state senator from Jackson in 130 years. This is not a once in a generation or once in a lifetime opportunity. This is a one-time opportunity to elect a Democrat from a competitive area to a safe blue seat, which means that if I were elected, I would have time to breathe and I wouldn't be running for my life in a 50-50 seat. We currently have Mike Shirkey, so any Democrat is great. We're excited about that. But if that person is from Ann Arbor, it lets the Jackson Republicans say that they don't really represent us. If our senator is from Jackson, they can't say that. It lets us continue to authentically build power. And all right. It lets us authentically build power and move our county towards durable majorities. And then we can flip Jackson from red to purple, which would be great so that places like Washtenaw County aren't carrying the burden of electing Democrats statewide all by yourself. So this is not a knock against anyone. It is just that I have almost a decade of personal credibility and relationships and work that I can start with. We also didn't only endorse in state legislative primaries. So our lone Democrat on the county commission in Jackson is a universally respected Black pastor who is being primaried by a self-proclaimed druid who routinely refers to Christians as scum. So we endorsed up and down the ballot.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Shink.
Thank you. So I'm a member of Ann Arbor Rotary. I also spend a fair bit of time at the Dexter Rotary, and we have a 4-way test. Is it true? Is it beneficial? Is it fair to all concerned? Does it build goodwill? And I live my life by those tenets, and that's part of the reason why I'm a Rotarian, and it's part of the reason that I'm running for state senate. I really like the approach of our Democratic Party. From the beginning, we, and I'm one of us, have welcomed Ms. Helkwood into our midst. The Ann Arbor Democratic Party has done the same. It took me several months to figure out how to even contact the Democratic Party in Jackson. That would be me emailing Ms. Helkwood's husband. I've also worked really hard in my service to our community, and I've been a Northfield Township trustee for 4 years, and then a Washtenaw County Commissioner for 3.5, that I avoid any appearance of impropriety, and having the same people who are benefiting from the change be the ones who made it. And that really kind of keeps me out of accessing Jackson voters in some ways. To me, has that appearance of impropriety. And so I find it deeply disturbing. I also think that it is dividing. And we know from listening to the race class narrative that the only way that we can address the Republican craziness is to stand together. Anything that we're doing to divide each other from each other is destructive. And it's not the approach I would take, even though I would love it if the Washtenaw County Dems could endorse me. With that said, I would say to the people of Jackson and to you, all the people of Washtenaw County, through my work in Ypsilanti, where I didn't have a lot of connections before I was elected, I had some, but not a lot. I have shown that I can build relationships in a place where I don't live and where I don't look like the people I'm serving. It isn't about me. It's about us and our community. And I want to go to the Senate in Lansing to pass policies and to bring back resources for the entire district. And I don't care if they're my friends, and I don't care if they're my associates, and I don't care if they voted against me. That's why I'm going. And so I'll just maybe leave it at that. I think we need to work on building unity because we have a serious threat against our democracy right now. And if we divide, we're just going to lose. Thanks.
Thanks very much. As I promised Ms. Helkwood at the start of this question, I'll give her another chance to kind of respond. And I'm not going to, there's going to be no bell ringing on this one. So you have a chance to fully respond to the extent, use the time you need. Ms. Helkwood.
Sure. So I want to make it very clear that I will personally support every Democrat who comes out of primaries in the Jackson-Washtenaw seats. I will also advocate and strongly recommend to Jackson County Democratic Committee members that our party do the same. Democratic organizations often endorse in primaries. MDP caucuses do it all the time. They've done it this year. In general, party institutions should do what their body dictates, and they should do what is best to win durable majorities for Democrats. Washtenaw County is different. It's a different dynamic. There are very, very few Republicans who can even contest a seat. And since the Democratic primary is most of the race in Washtenaw County, it makes sense that you would have a policy of neutrality. In Jackson County, it is a very different reality, and our members made a different choice. And I will say again, our members made a different choice. I didn't unilaterally decide this. It was a unanimous vote of our members to change our bylaws. And then at the next monthly meeting, there was another unanimous vote of our entire body to endorse a slate of Democratic candidates from local county commission levels at every level all the way up to state senate. So this was not about me, and it was not something that I've done. I'd also say that the first 2 weeks that I was running for this office after I announced, I called through every elected local official and all of the state legislative level electeds in Washtenaw County. I sent emails. I did everything short of sending carrier pigeons. I got maybe 2 or 3 responses back. I am really hopeful that if I am able to win this primary, some of those calls will be returned. So I'll just leave that there. And then I'll say, we can't keep winning statewide, and we'll never reliably win the state legislature if elected Democrats only are elected from Detroit, Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, and Oakland County. There's not enough people. Diversity in geography and race and wealth and age are all important, and they're not represented at the elected level. That lets Republicans drive wedges between us. It lets Republicans make the case that Democrats don't represent regular people, or that there aren't Democrats in rural areas or in small towns. And we know that that's not true. And another major concern that was outlined by the redistricting commission was that Washtenaw County would dominate Jackson County in every shared seat. There is a real possibility that if every single one of these seats go to someone from Washtenaw County, we will lose them all in 2031. They'll pack every Democrat back into Ann Arbor, doom us to a Republican gerrymander, and we'll lose the only fair state Senate map we've ever had because we're doing exactly what they thought we would do. We're not attacking Democrats. This isn't anti-Sioux or anti-Washtenaw County. This is a strategic decision that we made to expand Democratic power and to try to build something sustainable that flips a red area to purple over the next decade and sets us up to continue to make this argument to the redistricting commission in 2031.
Thank you very much. I think this particular point could be discussed further. What I'd like to do is give the questions from the audience a chance to ask a few questions. I should say both candidates will have a chance at the very end to make a closing statement, and we can come back to that then. So I see Joanna Louise Spencer Siegel has a hand up. I'm going to allow her to talk.
Oh, I get to talk. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
We can, loud and clear.
Thanks for taking my question. So I'm a resident of Ann Arbor. I really appreciated Commissioner Shink's point that even during a pandemic, we should expect kids and families to thrive. So thank you for that point. And what I want to do in my question is push back a little bit on both candidates regarding their assistance on local school district control. So here in Ann Arbor, our school district remained closed for a long time after neighboring districts and local private schools opened safely. And many Ann Arbor families and kids did not thrive in these conditions. So this was especially true for working families. And as Commissioner Shink pointed out, for families with kids with special needs. So I fall into both of those categories. And so what I want to know is, what can you do or will you do at the state level when school districts are making decisions that don't allow the community to thrive? And, also with the understanding that these decisions have ramifications that will be around for decades. So thank you. That's my question.
Right. I think Commissioner Shink can answer first, and then Ms. Heckwood. Again, I'm going to try to revert now to the 2-minute limit.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned as a county commissioner is that when the state offers grants, people tend to take them up very easily. And so I think there needs to be a combination of requirements and then also grants. And so if school is not in person or it is curtailed, there needs to be a requirement that children are getting a certain level of education. And where that is something that's maybe not attainable, having grants is going to help make it more attainable, because then it reduces some of the resource constraints off of the schools. I don't think that the schools want to shut anybody out. I think they were overwhelmed by COVID. And I have a high schooler who sat in a room for 2 years. doing school pretty much remotely. So, I know it's been a tough go.
Ms. Eckwood.
Yeah, I think the issue is primarily a local one, and so asking what to do at the state level, I think is maybe. I'm not sure, right? I think because the state level, like the state said, you can open back up, and then your local school board didn't. So I think maybe one of the things to do is consider replacing some of the school board members that you disagree with by running for school board yourself, and really, sort of taking that initiative and working to fix things at that level. I think we're going to see ramifications of this generation of kids and the way that COVID impacted their social and emotional health and their learning for generations. I think this is something we'll be studying for decades. That's the sociology major in me. But in terms of what could happen differently at the state level, I don't know. I'd be interested to learn.
Thank you very much. Caroline Altomare has her hand up. I'd like to permit her to unmute and ask a question.
Thank you very much for taking my question. First of all, I am delighted to have such two strong Democratic candidates finally able to represent me in the state Senate. I can't tell you how unhappy I've been with the representation we've had so far, so I'm thrilled. And I'm not too impressed with your Republican, with the Republican candidate, the bios that I've read. And in any event, the new district is a really interesting map or conglomeration of city and rural. And I'm a precinct delegate in Scioto County, have been for 4 years. I'm an area captain for volunteers and so on and so forth. And the approach of rural voters and the issues of rural voters are so different than city voters. And either of you, as our state senator, will have quite the constituency to have to bridge. You've addressed some of that in your answers to questions in the talks that you've given so far, but what specifically do you think that you'll do to try to address both or bridge the gap? Thank you.
All right, I think Ms. Eckwood will go first here, and then Commissioner Shink.
Sure. Caroline, thanks for being a precinct delegate. That's a thankless job. I would push back and say that I think the issues of rural and urban voters are more similar than they are different. I think a lot of it is access. How far do you have to travel to drop your kid off? Like, what is your commute like? How much gas do you have to put in your tank? I think those things are, frankly, internet access, right? We know that there are a lot of urban areas that have pretty poor access to the internet. It's not just the rural broadband. So I would sort of push back on that and try to find ways to address the fact that a lot of the issues facing rural and urban communities is a lack of access and a lack of resources, and not sort of give into that frame that people are so different in those places, and try to bridge the gap from the start that we are more similar than we are different. And then it's just meeting people, right? It's just calling people and going to township meetings and knocking on doors and just really showing up and showing that you're listening, even if that's all you're able to do is to just hear people. I think that that access to our institutional power, it sometimes is pretty restricted to folks particularly in rural communities. A lot of times just for density reasons, right? Like, you get more bang for your buck talking to people where there are more people, but really focusing on the idea that we are more similar than we are different.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Shink.
Thank you. So I don't know if everybody knows, I live in Northfield Township. I live on a 35-acre small farm, moved here to be a farmer, and found out that I'm actually better at representing my fellow residents. I was first elected as part of a bipartisan slate in 2004 to the Northfield Township Board, and I remain close with those Republicans yet. I remain close with our township board. Obviously, we see things differently on quite a few topics, but on the way we need services in our smaller towns, and the roads and land preservation and mental health issues. Those are all things that we share in common. And so, you know, when I talk to a rural voter, I'm talking to my neighbor. And there are a number of Republican supervisors who have said, and, you know, remember, I just got broadband to everybody. It's not built yet. I know that. Who said that they do support me, but they're not going to say it publicly because they're really worried about the Republicans coming after them for it. So at the same time, I have built strong relationships in Ypsilanti where it's more urban environment. And so I have been able to bridge the different sort of worlds, so to speak, right? Because we do have more in common than we have apart. I've also been very active in Ann Arbor and have a lot of connections there. So I think it's not an either or, right? It's an and. We can make these bridges. I've been building bridges for as long as I've lived here. We can build these bridges. We can work together. We can focus on what we do have in common while not giving up any of our democratic core values. I'm going to Lansing to protect civil rights. I'm going to Lansing to protect a person's right not to be discriminated against for being gay, for being transgender. I'm not going to give any of that up. But at the same time, there's a lot that we can work on. And I've been talking to a lot of voters, particularly in Jackson County, who identify as Republican and say, I don't always vote that way. I'm going to be voting Democratic this time. So we just have to keep talking to people.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask both candidates. There are two more questions. It is 11:56. Can you stay for 10 more minutes to 12:10 so that to answer those questions? Thank you very much.
Yes, but then I have to go pick up my plants from the Conservation District.
Okay, promise, 12:11 at the latest. Joe Summers, I'm unmuting you. You can ask your question. Joe? You should be able to talk, Joe.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Commissioner Shink, I loved what you said about wanting to solve problems by getting everyone around the table who's affected by issues. But it's been hard for me to understand you're pulling yourself and county leadership out of the Washtenaw Equity Project's attempts to gather everyone around the table to address the kinds of racial disparities that we find at every level of our criminal justice system. This is such a critical issue. I know it's an issue you care about, and now much of the county leadership is no longer at the table working with the community to address these issues. So I'm wondering what you think can be done now to help repair this breach.
Thank you for your question. So I want everybody to know that I worked closely with the crew group to bring the Washtenaw Equity Partnership to fruition. I spent many hours during the height of the pandemic, in addition to dealing with the vaccines and the masks and the testing, to help make this come to fruition. Wrangling the elected officials, we wrote letters of support. We got a $200,000 grant to hire the Vera Institute to bring together people from across Washtenaw County to work on reforming the criminal justice system or the criminal legal system. And so I was co-chairing, and we were there at the table. I spent many hours a week, like 5 to 10 hours a week on it some weeks. And what became apparent was that there were some activists, including paid activists, who were using it as a platform to vent. And I didn't make the decision that anybody from Washtenaw County, other than me, should pivot away from that. That decision was made independently of me, and it would have happened regardless of what I did. However, when our racial equity officer said that she was no longer able to participate because she believed that the approach to the sheriff was basically racist, and my fellow co-chair said, let her go, I made a decision that I was going to put my energy into something that would be more productive while continuing to support the Washtenaw Equity Partnership. And I want everybody to know that the county continues to support the Washtenaw Equity Partnership financially. So I am very much, and with data too. So I'm very much looking forward to the recommendations of the Washtenaw Equity Partnership. At the same time, we have had issues with the CJCC. We appointed the sheriff chair of the CJCC. We thought he would take a more active approach, and he did not. Now, this isn't the only thing going on in the county. The courts are involved in work for diversion and deflection. I've been working with the prosecutor's office to support their work in changing the approach to the criminal legal system. I spend several hours a week on a gun violence intervention program that's data-driven, and we've already allocated money to that. And quite frankly, I've heard from the community in Ypsilanti that that's the most important thing. We're working with the Friends of Restorative Justice to get a restorative justice center some space. That's the request from the county, and we're working to make that happen. Nothing's been announced because we haven't achieved it yet. It's messy. And one of the things that I've learned is I can't make another independently elected official do anything. I've got to bring him to the table with carrots. We're working on the CJCC. We hope to have that functioning better soon. And there are a fair number of community representatives on that group. I continue to meet with people in small groups and independently, and that work is ongoing. It has not been smooth. I am tenacious and I have not quit. We are just working at it from different directions because, like you said, Mr. Summers, we do share the same goal together, and we're going to keep working on it. And the one other thing I would say too, and as I'm thinking about running for state senate, is some of this work, we need more support from the state. The SCAO can do so much to support it. I know from our chief judge that she would like support to have a better data collection system. And we did just support the court with several $1 million to have a better recording system, but they need better data. As the judges were saying before, the data that we're collecting now is insufficient to do the work that we're trying to do. So anyway, we're going to keep working on it. Not going to quit.
Thank you very much. Ms. Heckwood, it strikes me that this was a question really just directed to Commissioner Shink. So the next question, you will start as the first answer. This will be the last one we're going to take. So I have Tajali. I know a Tajali Hodge, but I'm not sure if this is the same person. And I've permitted you to talk.
Thank you, Tajli. Yes. I'm sure that a lot of us have seen the news articles and we are wondering, for both candidates, have you ever resigned or been recalled from public office? And if so, how do we know that you will be committed to the work for the benefit of our district and won't quit when it gets tough?
Commissioner Ms. Heckwood.
Yeah, I think in the way that the last question was directed to Sue, this is probably just for me, unless there's something I don't know. I am happy to talk through the saga of Jackson local electeds being recalled. It's happened a lot. There's a pretty vocal group of about 3 people, one of whom I mentioned earlier is running against our only Democratic county commissioner, who routinely recall folks. I would say the recall was a couple of things. It was mostly in response to the appointment process, which people were unhappy with. I was also unhappy with it. We tried to amend that in the city charter so that it would be a different process that would be more democratic. And I think it's important to also consider the circumstances around the recall. It was going to ask one of the most vulnerable populations of the city, the ward that I represented, Ward 5, to come out to an election on May 5th, 2020. I made the choice that I didn't want my constituents to be part of an election that was happening in the scariest time of COVID. It was also the only thing that was going to be on the ballot in the city of Jackson at all. And so the city was going to have to pay for and staff an election on May 5th, 2020. And I just didn't think that that was right. And I think the way that you'll know that I'm not going to quit when it gets hard is that this running for state senate is way harder than city council. And I'm doing this with, with both feet in, and that I learned a lot about myself and about what it means to serve the public in my time on city council and in the 2 years since resigning. I hope that answers your question. And again, I'd be happy to talk more about this with people who have questions or concerns, or just want to hear some gossip from a community they're not familiar with.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Shink, you want to say something on this?
Yeah. I did have a recall against me once. It was approved, but then it failed before it ever got to a vote. It was when I was a township trustee, and some people were mad because we had blocked a very large bridge construction because it was going to be bonded. Well, people were mad about a whole bunch of stuff, partially probably because I was a Democrat too, but people were upset because we blocked a whole big bonding for a bridge construction. It was going to be $8 million, $29 million for an 8,000 person township. It would have bankrupted us. But I didn't quit. I kept on. And I do want to say that maybe I shouldn't say anything more, but I'll just say that when we're in office, we're there for trust, and you got to hang on, and you got to take the hard times. And I've had a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of stomach aches when I was in a tough position and people didn't agree with me. And I just held on because I was guided by my North Star of service above self. And that's what I will take to the Senate, because I'm not going for myself. I'm going to represent our entire community. And it's just really important to keep our eye on that piece of it.
Thank you very much. At this point, we have reached time for concluding remarks. You each have 2 minutes. Ms. Heckwood goes first.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for putting on this forum, for putting on all of the forums for the primary. I think that's a really great service. And I hope that I was able to introduce myself to some folks who I've not been able to access or introduce myself to as yet. I don't anticipate I've probably done a lot of mind changing, but it is still nice to be here. I am sure that all of the contacting on social media and the website will be shared out afterwards. But please, reach out to me if you have questions, if you just want to learn more, if you want to know more, if you think, that there's something that is important to you that would be good for someone from out county to know, I'd be happy to hear that. I think that's all that I'll say. I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
We appreciate the fact that you came. Commissioner Shink.
Thank you. A lot of you I know, not everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. It's been a real honor to be chair of the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners and to work with the 8 other commissioners who are also serving our broader Washtenaw County. It was a hard decision for me to run for state senate. One of the things that I was particularly concerned about is that we have made a huge stride. And under my leadership, I've really put a lot of time into connecting with people in the way resources are distributed in our county. And so I'm confident that this change in resources is going to change the level of segregation, the level of justice in our community, and it's going to remove barriers and create opportunities for people. And we're going to see paybacks for many, many years. And so it breaks my heart not to be a county commissioner anymore. Obviously, I'll be there till December 31st, but after that, regardless, I won't be. I chose to run for state senate because I know that the same things we're doing to improve our community here, we can do across the state. Jackson has a lot of the same issues that Ypsilanti has. I've been meeting with people from Jackson County. I've been building relationships. I've been building relationships with people in Grass Lake, in Brooklyn, in Clark Lake, in Spring Arbor. I can represent this district effectively, and I look forward to working with all of you and continuing on in service of our community. This is a wonderful place, and it's because everybody here is working hard to make it that way. So thanks.
I want to thank you both very much and for also agreeing to stay a few more minutes so we could get in the last questions from the audience.